There we go.
Okay. Good evening, ladies. Good evening, gentlemen. If you're watching, and you're very welcome to an evening with Christian women in the UK. I have got the very lovely Pastor Giselle, and she is the lead pastor at Pearls of Grace Ministries UK. And I've also got, why aren't you showing on my screen? Sidoni, the founder of Christian Women in the UK. And so my name is Ngum, and I'm an admin at Christian Women in the UK. And today we have got a very special topic because something's in the air. What are we talking about, ladies?
Love.
We're on the love train tonight.
Oh yeah, there was a song, wasn't there? Love Train or Love Locomotion or something, yeah.
70s cute. People all over the world join in on the love train. See, our love train is taking you to heaven. Okay, so different things. So again, tonight we're going to be talking about love, and I think it's very interesting because just a few days from now, there's going to be the big Valentine's Day celebration for those who are into that sort of stuff. So, and I think Valentine's Day is really about celebrating romantic love mainly, but I think over the years, it's kind of been, extrapolated. People celebrate all kinds of love, siblings, whatever, which I think is a good thing. But, love is one of those, it's just such a broad term, love, So I think I am going to start with Sidonie, who's looking very studious over that Bible. So, I want to see if she's actually reading something.
Yeah.
Are you reading or studying?
She's looking at the pictures. You're looking at the pictures.
Yes, I am actually.
Yeah, like, look to this school intense.
Exactly.
So
it's interesting.
What does it mean to you? What does it mean? What's your biblical understanding of it, or just even your own personal understanding of it?
I think it's important that we always go back to the Bible, because obviously that, as Christians, that should be our life manual, isn't it? So first 1 Corinthians 13, I think we're talking about this from verse 4, so it defines what love is. It says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. So this obviously relates back to the gifts. And up to verse 13, it says, you have the three main gifts: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And I was looking earlier, and it said something like 42%. The UK has a divorce rate of 42%.
Wow. Almost half.
Almost half.
1 in 2.
Which is, literally almost 1 in 2 marriages fail. And one of the, it gave 3 main reasons: people growing apart, money, I think children. So money, children, and sex were the 3 main reasons.
Wow.
But from sort of the ONS, Office of National Statistics, I was reading, and some of the excerpts that they took from people who took part in the study, what came across was this whole idea of, it seems like society has moved away from this definition of love. You hear things today, like people say, absolutely, there's no way I would forgive XYZ, and people are easily angered, and there's no forgiveness. And I think when we talk about romantic love from a Christian perspective, the Bible does, and not even romantic love, like you said before, even sibling love, any kind of love, we need to always bring it back to what the Bible says that love is. Obviously in Ephesians, we're given instructions for the household, and the man is the head, and wives likewise submit to each other as unto Christ. And we talked about that a few weeks ago, didn't we, about that Ephesians verse. So I think it's important, certainly as Christians, that we always go back to the Bible's definition of love, because the world will show us what they would have us think love is, what we should act, what we should say, how we should look. And it was like Giselle was saying earlier, some people would get very, very offended that it was her birthday, she said, and her husband forgot. And she was very forgiving, but you can imagine the amount of arguments that caused in some households. So I think certainly it's important that we always have the Bible's definition of love at the back of our minds, whether that's the way we train our kids, the way we relate to each other and our spouses, so that we don't then become part of that 1 in 2 statistic that we're seeing, which is as recent as 2020.
Wow. So Giselle, over to you. We want to know what love is. We know you can tell us.
Oh dear. Oh my. That is very interesting statistics you gave, Stoney, about divorce rate in the UK. And we're brought up now. There's loads of people now that when a relationship starts going wrong, instead of fixing it, they just dump it. It's like I remember when DVD players first came out. This is a couple of 100 years ago, and the first DVD player I bought was something like £300, and that was an awful lot of money.
What?
And every time it went wrong, or something went wrong with it, you got it fixed, you repaired it, and it lasted for a long time. Now you get it. Well, you don't use DVDs any longer, really. But when you did buy a DVD player, you can get one for £20, and they ask you in the shop, do you want to spend £13 and take a year warranty on it? No, thanks. If it breaks for 20 quid, I'll buy another one. But that's how the people treat relationships nowadays, and that is bad. And I agree with you. We should always get back to biblical love. And talking about biblical love, there are 4 types of biblical love. I'll blind you with my wonderful knowledge now. The first one is storge, which is empathy or a bond. And the second one is philia, which is friendship bond. Then you've got eros, which is the romantic love. But then the greatest love of all is the agape, and that is God's unconditional love. And what we've got to remember is that even though our earthly relationships are going up and down, and they're going roundabouts, and we're having quarrels, and we're having fights, and we're having arguments, and a lot of times in a relationship can be the loneliest time for a lot of people. If we know Christ, we know we're truly loved, because didn't God send Jesus to die for us? And that is, to me, is the pure definition of love.
Yeah, because Christianity is a love religion, isn't it? I mean, it does say, for God so loved the world.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And he came not to condemn the world, but to save it. Because see, when we quote John 3:16, I think we should always quote verse 17, and that's it, that he came to save the world and not condemn it. To me, go hand in hand. But that's love, and I call it the 11th commandment. When the disciples asked Jesus, "What's the best of it? What's the most important commandments?" Did Jesus himself not say, "Love one another"?
Now you will love one another as I have loved you. Yeah, and that's a challenge, isn't it? Because to love people the way Christ loves, that's hard because, I mean, even if we just talk about forgiveness, which I think we spoke about a few weeks ago as well, you know, just to be able to forgive somebody 77 times, 7 times.
It's hard. It is really hard.
That's hard. And yet we're called to be like Christ, or to be Christ-like, which means we have to imitate him in the way he loves, the way he forgives, the way he relates with people. And yeah, that's
big time.
That's a benchmark, which we can only do by the grace of God with the help of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is why, I don't know if you guys watch it, but there's a series that's really popular now called The Chosen. Series. And I think what, to me, I really like about The Chosen, when I just got, came to know Christ, The Chosen was really special for me, because what The Chosen does, that's kind of different from all the other films. The other films are kind of bios of Jesus, right? But I think what the Chosen does that is so good is that The Chosen looks at Jesus's relationships with people, how Jesus could have affected people. And I think that was so good, because it just showed different permutations of Jesus's love. Sometimes it was, you could say, strict, in rebuke. Sometimes Jesus could be sharp-tongued, as we know. Sometimes it was very, I think for me, very tender, because I think of like the scene of the woman at the well, and Jesus. That to me is just one of the most beautiful love stories I've ever heard, because that woman, she was going through all sorts of things at that time. And you talked about God's unconditional love. You really see it in that story, because Jesus is like, I know you can't even tell me the things that you've been through, because sometimes we carry things in our hearts that we are ashamed of. You can't even, there are times, I don't know about other people, there have been times when I've even wanted to pray. I'm like, I can't even bring myself to pray about this thing. And I think that's what was happening there. And Jesus was like, okay, you don't even need to tell me. I'll speak it out for you, because you want to confess it, but you can't even bring yourself. And so I think for me, the first form of love that you described, Giselle, empathy, you really see two aspects of Jesus, that the empathy and the sort of non-judgmental. It's not like he said what you're doing is correct. He was just like, yeah, okay, you've had
I think a lot of us need to learn that, don't we? We need to learn.
Yeah, and then Jesus also picked up on one thing that I think sometimes we talk about other types of love, because he said to the woman, you're looking, it's almost like he said to her, you're looking for something. And when you find that thing, which is me, literally, I'll give you water that will make you never thirst. Because if you think about it, if you're married, you've been married 5 times, you're definitely looking for love, right? But she was looking for love in just the wrong places. And I think also she didn't even love herself.
That's it. Exactly. We need to learn to love ourselves. We really do.
That's the thing. And it's something that I would like to get both of you's impression on, because I think sometimes people confuse self-indulgence with self-love, because you see a lot of, going back to social media, unfortunately, but it seems to be the platform where this happens, where you have, there is self-care, let's not lie. There's good self-care where you take time out for yourself, but all sorts of things now pass as self-care. So what to you, and this is to both of you, starting with you, Giselle, where do you draw the line between self-love and self-indulgence?
Oh, wow. Well, I don't think I indulge myself. I really don't. Okay, I like to put on some makeup every day. I like to do my hair every day, and I like to have clean clothes on every day. But I don't consider that self-indulgence. I consider that making the best of what I have and being a representative for a good representative for the kingdom of heaven. But I don't go to the hairdresser. I cut my own hair. I don't go to, and I don't dye my hair. I don't go to a nail salon. I do all my own manicures and pedicures. So I don't really indulge myself.
Oh wow, Giselle.
I don't.
I think you can do those things. See, I don't have the talent to do those things that you do. But I think, Sidonie, what do you think? What do you think about, do you may disagree with me. Do you think there is a culture of self-indulgence that's passing as self-love?
I think so. But I think there's also a culture at the moment that is very, very egocentric. I think there's this new age, love yourself at all costs. You are a mini god or you are a god.
Yeah.
You are the force behind the force.
Yeah.
And you are all that. And yeah. But what that does is that builds up in people this ability that or this attitude or mentality that they've got the ability to save themselves. And so to be able to occupy that mental space that they've created for themselves, they feel that they have to do XYZ to get there, to occupy that space of a mini god, you know, because they've built up this visual image of what a god with a small g looks like. And so I think it's very, very dangerous because it buys into this idea of we don't need God. We're enough. We can buy or we can work our way into heaven. So I think self-care is important, but your self-love should be rooted in your understanding of who you are in Christ, in your understanding of your limitations, in your understanding of your mortality and the finality of your mortality, and knowing that beyond this life, without God, there is nothing else for you. And I think when people start to understand that or appreciate that and try to start living beyond the here and the now, then you will get a kind of awareness, because I think there's this, everybody says they're so woke and they're so spiritually woke at the moment, but they really aren't, because you know, COVID comes along and everybody's like, well, what happens to me if I die now? You know, you need to see the statistics for what is there after life when COVID hit on Google searches. It was phenomenal. I mean, when I looked into it, it was amazing. So all of a sudden, people that were spiritually woke then started questioning their own beliefs and their own mortality.
Yeah.
So I think this whole self-indulgent thing, yes, it is a thing, but people try to pass it off as self-care, but I think it's rooted in the idea that they are enough and they do not need a God to tell them how to live or to instruct them on how to live. And that's a shame, because, as Christians, we believe that we're made in God's image and we're put here for his glory and to serve a purpose that he's put us here to serve. And so it's like, the person who knows the best way to handle a machinery, or, is the person that writes the manual.
Yeah.
And yet you can have a go at operating the machinery without reading the manual. That's fine, but it might go horribly wrong.
Yeah. Definitely be ready for accidents.
Exactly. So I think we just need to and I think people need to know that there's also this thing of, people think of, he's a God of anger, yes, but the Bible's clear that he disciplines those he loves. And like you said earlier, even in his rebuke, Jesus was loving.
Oh yeah.
People very often will say, I'll tell it as it is. And they use that as an excuse to be rude and to be offensive.
Yep.
You can be loving in your rebuke. And I think it's important that as Christians, we try to show this Christ-like love, because that's what's going to bring people to God.
Yeah.
We say, look, this is a religion of love. You're not going to be judged. Come as you are. You'll meet Christ at the cross, and there he will replenish you. He will wash you clean. He will reconcile you to himself. But if we're not showing that image of love to the world, then we're failing as Christians. We're failing.
Yeah. Like you said, Christianity is a love religion. And I think if you look at other religions, it's the one thing that distinguishes it, in the sense that you don't have to do anything to earn God's love. And when I say you don't have to do, it's not your works, put it that way. No amount of your works. And this is very interesting, because I think sometimes we're brought up on a very religious diet, if you like. And we're taught that, if you go to church on Sunday, if you're obedient to your parents, blah, blah. I certainly came from a very works-oriented background. And then, you had this sort of, God is love sort of situation. But I still had a very works mentality. And it's only, I tell you, when I just first got to know Christ, that I was talking with a friend, and she was like, you know what? No amount of good things that you do in this world will ever be good enough, because God is such a perfect person. It's a perfect light. And that's when it struck me what salvation really meant. That, salvation is this thing where Jesus has literally taken on your sins, because you should have died in his place.
Yep.
And you think no one is going to do that out of, how can you not love somebody to do such a thing for them? So it really brought home the message of salvation to me, because I think when you look at other religions, there's always some kind of work to do. You talked about the New Age. It's about you trying to be perfect. And of course, you can't attain those standards. You end up being disappointed. People can pretend and lie, but a lot of the time you end up, in other religions, it's how often you fast, how often you do this, you do that. But then you just end up not feeling good enough. Isn't it nice to just be like, okay, God, I know I cannot do this by myself. I'm just here. Give me the grace. Of course, you don't want to abuse that grace. But at the same time, I think for me, it's building that really sincere relationship with God, where you get to a point where you can just talk to God and be real, right?
Yes.
About your weaknesses. And you can say, there are times when I've been trying to fast and I'm like, God, this ain't even working today. I'm hungry. I need to eat. No. And you know what's so funny? I think it's once you kind of, I can say, burst into that relationship with God, it's great, because you talk to God about things that you would never have talked about before.
And it's interesting because he's not asking us, when as Christians, we're not asked, like you say, to work our way into salvation. We're asked to live a life that is like Christ, out of love. And that the Bible says, if you love me, you will obey my commands.
Amen.
If you love me, you will follow my statutes.
Yep.
And because they're there for your own good. God does not need the Bible. This is all here for our good. And so we then live this life as a response to the love that he's poured out to us. So it's almost like if you had an equation and 1 + 1 is on this side of the equal side and then 2 is on that side, he's already done the 1 + 1. Our response, which is the 2, is coming after the equal sign. And so people very often get this wrong, and say, I have to follow the 10 commandments and I have to do this and I have to do that. But what they forget to know is that how your eagerness and your transformation, which is the work that Christ will begin in you when you give your life to Christ, is as a result of your love for him, because you want to please him, because you want to please God. And so you want to live that life as a result of your love, because he says, Christ even said to Peter, didn't he? Do you love me, Peter? And then Peter said, I love you. He said, if you love me, feed my sheep. Then he asked again, do you love me? He could have said, I command you to feed my sheep.
Yeah,
exactly. Feed my sheep.
And isn't it lovely though that it's almost like God gives us the option. Doesn't force us. And so when you see people that, I speak to a lot of women, and I'm sure you do as well, Giselle, I'm sure you do, but you kind of meet women that go through, whether they're in relationships or situationships or marriages, and they're either being abused or they are the abuser.
Yes.
Or the manipulator. And, they'll be like, if you love me, you'll do this, that, and that. And they dictate the terms of their love. But Christ doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't.
Nowhere does God force us into a relationship with him. Nowhere does he, even like I said, even when Jesus was asking Peter, he said, if you love me, do you love me? Peter could have turned around and said no. He He said, I love you. This is after he denied him 3 times already, which is, classic human story, isn't it?
Yes.
No, that's very true to me. I always think with Jesus and Peter, because I always think, like, who turns around and hands over their legacy to somebody who denied them 3 times, right? When we talk about forgiveness, because you think about it, that you set up a company and this employee does the worst thing ever, completely betrays you, and then you go, here you go, here are the deeds to this company. Now you run it.
But isn't that because, and this is an interesting point, and this is what I say to my kids sometimes, and it's a very basic lesson that even a lot of grown-ups miss. People very often fail to trust the basic goodness in humanity. Yeah. And I think Jesus sees that, and I say to my kids sometimes, you haven't got to be naive and you haven't got to be too trusting because the world is evil, right? But you have got to trust that the basic intention of somebody who you love, whether that's a sibling or a relative, by and large is positive. And I think Jesus does that. And he shows us that time and time again. He shows us that his love for humanity is based on this goodness, this base layer of goodness, which, if we're all made in God's image, then nobody is inherently evil because God is not any evil. Nobody is beyond redemption because God isn't that. And so when you start dealing with people from that baseline of, I know there's good in you, that changes your relationship altogether.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're not wanting to take offense at every little thing they say. You're actually stopping to think, did you really mean that? Or were you trying to say something else and that just came out wrong?
No, that's a really good point. That's a very good point, because I think,
brilliant,
particularly in the world that we live in, it's so easy to mistrust people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also sometimes people's own experiences can really color the way they begin to see things. Because if you've been hurt before, you get into defense mode and all of that. So it's really good to bring it back to that, seeing the basics, I should say, people are inherently good. That is, for me, that's a learning point. That is such a good point. I think maybe it's just giving us another topic.
It probably has.
Another one.
People need rehabilitation. There are people, there used to always be joke about, like, a woman who's been with so many wrong guys, right? And then when she finally meets the nice guy, she doesn't know what to do. And so it's that thing where hurt and trauma can take away people's ability to see the basic goodness in people.
Yeah.
So one day we might talk about love rehabilitation.
Yeah. And also that will save a lot of marriages. If a lot of women, I'm just going to go back to G, because, if G's starting point with her husband was that he deliberately forgot her birthday and he absolutely was out to ruin her day.
He probably did.
But you know what I mean? You chose to believe the good in him and be like, it's a date, he forgot it, but there's bigger things in life.
Exactly.
You're a really good guy.
Yeah, to get upset and annoyed and hold a grudge and stuff like that over something as simple as that. No, there's more important.
It's caused the fair few fights.
There really is. When something as simple as that upsets us, annoys us, and we get all sort of, that's it, I'm never going to speak to him again, or I'm not going to cook his favorite dinner, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z, and all the rest of it. Then it boils up anger in you, and very, 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 very quickly, before you know it, you're saying things that you regret. But once the words are out of your mouth, you can't take them back. And a lot of times, all the sorries and all the forgive me's in the world doesn't help the other person. The words hurt. So we do need to stand back, bite our tongue, and count to 50, and maybe go and kick the proverbial cat and just carry on with life. That's it.
I like count to 50.
Okay. Well, normal people count to 10 only, but I'm not normal. I have to count to 50.
5 times.
Yeah,
Guys,
5 times. Yeah. Wait till I get to 70. But there's more things in life to worry
There
about.
are, and I think Hollywood is
Or it's a
guilty.
culprit.
It's a culprit for
Yeah.
romanticizing what love is, and romance is good. Don't get me wrong. Don't if that's your thing, that's your thing. But I also think Hollywood has, like we quite often say between the three of us in our conversations, spoilt what love is. And so it's important that we go back to the biblical definition of love. So he didn't get you 12 roses or whatever on Valentine's Day. Doesn't mean he doesn't love you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So he didn't get you a box of chocolate. It doesn't mean he doesn't love you, or he didn't take you out to the fanciest restaurant in town.
But
Go
why
on,
do we
Jude.
have? But why do they have to wait till one day a year when
Yeah,
commercialism tells them to do it? Why not grab a bunch of flowers throughout the year or something? What I
Do it
think
every other day except Valentine's Day.
that's it. Exactly.
Rebels.
But I think a lot of women put too much store into this St. Valentine's Day, where they have to have a dozen red roses. They have to be taken out for a meal. And because there's so many people going out to restaurants and things, the service is bad, the food's bad, and all the rest of it. So why not wait to any other time throughout the year and wait? It's like Michael and I, we don't buy each other birthday presents, and we don't buy each other Christmas gifts. We don't fall into that stupid commercial things, and we don't celebrate St. Valentine's. But whatever we need throughout the year, we'll get it throughout the year.
No, but that's good. And I prefer that because you know what? I really like the idea of people doing love their own way in a very original way. It's the same thing with like marriage proposals, right? I mean, you've both been married, so I don't know how you would propose to. But you always see the thing of the guy goes down on one knee, the woman takes the ring.
With a massive diamond.
Like, you've been dating this guy for a while. It was always a possibility, right? But you're like, oh, I can't believe you're trying.
Well,
that guy has been dating you for all that time. You took why aren't you propose everything, So
Michael will probably raise his head now and look at me and sort of give me a dirty look because he's on the other side here. He's in bed. How he proposed to me, it was so romantic. Now, he didn't go down on one knee or anything like that. He didn't have the diamond ring and all the rest of it. He got a new diary. And he hands me the diary and he says, here, is there any dates you want to put in that? And I said, what, like a wedding date? He said, aye. That was it. Seriously, that was our...
Michael, I'm going to get him a glass of whiskey for that. No, but you know what?
Just a glass of whiskey. Seriously, that was
Tell Michael he's going to join us to do a men's session at some point.
Yeah, well, you see him every week. He'll come in and put clothes up here in the top of his cabinet before he gets into bed. I keep telling him, I said, you're famous. You were reeling the camera last night. I said, some one of these fine nights you're going to turn around and go, hey. He said, yeah, right. Yeah, we'll get him on for a chat one night.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
No, that'd
be lovely.
Yeah, tell him I owe him a glass of whiskey for that. Sydney, did you get a romantic proposal?
I did get a romantic proposal.
Oh, down on one knee.
I did get a down on one knee. Yes, it was lovely. Yes, I did.
Were you one of these girls crying?
Oh, I'm terrible now. My tears don't flow that easily.
I mean, it's cool. I just say, it's so funny because at one point, like you watch, and especially I think again, social media just has a lot to blame for this because some of them you look at.
I think so, yeah.
Right? I saw one. This guy got the helicopter. Everything. I mean, cool. If you
also,
I'm not gonna say no to a helicopter. By the way, guys, okay, I'm not gonna say no to a huge ring. I like jewelry, but what I'm just saying is that, like, it's almost like as if people sometimes feel under pressure to propose a certain way. Hello, I think you guys may have frozen.
No, we're still here.
So I just think it's nice for people to do it originally. Because I know somebody who proposed to his wife, they didn't even have a ring. I think they went away for a weekend and then they just sat down and they talked about it.
An onion ring.
for us to get married, right? And then
that would bring tears to your eyes.
Yeah, there wasn't a ring. So it was just like more. They talked about it, decided it's a good idea. Yeah.
Oh dear. And you know too that when Michael and I did get married, we ran off like two teenagers to Gretna Green. We eloped. Just the two of us. Yeah, we did, just the two of us. Because pals of mine in Northern Ireland started, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do the other thing. And pals of Michael's and mine here, you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do the other thing. And we both looked at one another and thought, it's our wedding. What do we want to do? And Michael had suggested, let's go to Jamaica. But you hear horror stories about you going off to something like that and getting married. So in the end, we decided we went off to Gretna Green. We told nobody. The wedding venue down at Gretna Green, I said it has to be a Christian wedding. We have to have a pastor marry us, and they organized the pastor for us. And I said we need 2 witnesses, so they organized 2 witnesses from the staff, and Michael and I drove down, and we got married, and we came back, and that was it. And you know what he did? He's so romantic. You know what he did? For our wedding feast, we were going to go to McDonald's for our wedding feast, but then he decided no, only the best was good enough for me, so he took me to KFC instead.
Oh, no. Funny, the KFC has wedding stories.
I don't
know. KFC is a thing for weddings. I remember reading the newspaper thing where people left and they went to a KFC. Yep. I know another person who they actually had a lovely wedding. It was like probably only about like 5 people as guests. And then they went, they did the registry and then went to this Chinese place, had a lovely meal, and left. And that was it. Yeah. So I just think people should do things that one day it's really about them, things that they can be true to, and things that are just original to them. There's nothing wrong with all the things that we've said, but I just think it's nice for something to be really original. I'd rather somebody did just something really original rather than just pulling some choreographed thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. I think we've run out of time, haven't we?
Have indeed. We're well over our time.
Any ideas about wedding proposals, you come to us. We're consultants.
Yeah, definitely. Sedona and I will organize your wedding. And I'll even come down in your wedding.
Oh, ladies. So yes, we've just about come to the end tonight. Thank you all very much for watching. And it's goodbye from Sidonie, from Giselle, and from myself.
Night.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
If you celebrate.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Love you all. Bye.
Bye.